Thus far, there are basically two strategies that Donald Trump and his defenders are using against this impeachment inquiry. We've got misinformation, tons and tons of misinformation. The second, though, is worse. It's threats. You've already seen a little bit of this. Last week, he implied that either the whistleblower or whoever was providing information to the whistleblower should potentially be executed. We should deal with spies like we used to. And that was just a taste of what we've gotten over the past couple of days. Donald Trump also tweeted out a quote from Pastor Robert Jeffress. I'm not gonna read the entire thing, but it ends with, if the Democrats are successful in removing the president from office, which they never will be, I'm assuming he added that, it will cause a civil war-like fracture in this nation from which our country will never heal. So I'm sure that back in the 90s, Robert Jeffress was saying the same thing about Bill Clinton. It would destroy the nation, we could never impeach him.
Oh, you're being sarcastic.
Probably not,
that, yeah.
Yes, but I think that is an opportunistic use of, I've found someone who used civil war-like terminology. I'm just gonna tweet it out, no big deal. I just wanna start sending messages to my followers that if this were to happen, it's as big of a split, as big of a wound to our nation as the Civil War.
I hate that, and I feel bad stealing someone else's joke. I don't remember who tweeted this. It was like retweeted on my page, but it was like, it said Trump's only talking about the Civil War because he knows we put up statues of the losers.
Okay, that's a good point. I don't know who tweeted that, that is good, they deserve credit. That same sort of idea, Rudy Giuliani, who is bafflingly a major public figure in America, he tweeted, I appeal to honest and fair-minded Democrats to realize that equal treatment under law is necessary for domestic tranquility. We're all Americans. The differing treatment by media and law enforcement for Trump's versus Biden's and Clinton's is a real problem for all of us to solve. So if we're going to have domestic tranquility, maybe gotta go easy in this particular case. What's the opposite of domestic tranquility? I think we have an idea of what that might look like.
Also, like, people who do things like bring up the Civil War as like when talking about themselves personally, that is so racist. It is, it's gross. The Civil War was about slavery. And all you out there that are like, no, it was about states' rights. It was about states having the right to own slaves, okay? That's it, one right, that was all they were fighting for. It was about slavery. Nothing will ever again be a civil war in the United States. It just won't happen.
I agree.
This is about people not wanting the leader of this country to break the law. Don't compare yourself to Jesus, and don't compare your personal battle to the Civil War.
Exactly.
Like, let's just all agree to those rules, you know?
Let's do that. I'm very glad that you brought up that argument, because very often they'll say, no, it was about states' rights. And then they just always seem to stop talking.
What right?
They
right.
never actually, so what do you think you mean by that? There's another example of that I've seen very often. It's very popular on social media, and it ties into this. So Laura Trump, I think she's the fourth worst Trump. She tweeted, try to impeach this. So there's two issues with that. One is that seems like a threat. The idea that like, oh, you can try, but there's so many more of us. We'll come and get you. Do you know all of us have AR-15s? But this image that you see there is generally not used as a threat against impeachment. It's generally used as a, well, look at, this is why we win elections. Look, the whole country is red. And that to me is like no, it's about states' rights. Okay, so when you put out that map, what do you think that means? You know that you lost the popular vote by millions of votes. You know that doesn't actually mean that 85% of the country votes Republican. It seems to be implying that voting is actually done by each acre gets a vote or something like that. That like if you have a big pasture, that's 10 votes. And I will very often hear, like, so when I responded, I tweeted out in response to that, I said land doesn't vote, which seems like a pretty, I don't know how you argue against that. And then it got into the whole popular vote thing. And so the response always is, yeah, but the only reason you won the popular vote is because California and New York. And I always wonder.
Those are humans though, right?
And what? And what does that mean?
They matter everywhere. If every human matters the same. Also, someone replied to her tweet with a picture of Nixon's electoral map by county, and it looks the same.
Don't quote me. I think he won the popular vote by like 20%. Like that was a time where you had these big blowouts, and he got impeached.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you would like to make the case that rural voters have some sort of natural moral superiority for their vote compared to people who live on the coast or New York or California, feel free to do that, but you have to actually do that. You can't just imply that that's the case without making the case.
Also, we're having fun with how stupid that map is, right? But what's frustrating about that is that argument right there is try me. We can do what we want, try me, and that's not okay. If you didn't do anything wrong, you shouldn't have to say nobody will care, because essentially you're saying nobody will care.
Yeah.
People like us so much that no one will care. What you should be saying is my father-in-law didn't break the law.
Yeah.
The fact that you're not saying that, right? Like this is a problem.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and
that you can't even defend it. You're just like, no, so what? That's essentially that. Her tweet essentially says, so what?
Yeah. There's too many of us.
That's weird, yeah.
Even if he broke a law, I don't care. There's too many of us. And by the way, the polls have moved so fast in the past week. There's just another poll,
so
majority support for impeachment.
How stupid that tweet was.
Exactly. So there's the overall threat against the country. There's also very particular threats. So last week it was we should deal with spies the way we used to. Jump to this weekend. Donald Trump says, like every American, I deserve to meet my accuser, especially when this accuser, the so-called whistleblower, represented a perfect conversation with a foreign leader in a totally inaccurate and fraudulent way. So he didn't. You put out the transcript confirming everything that the whistleblower said. Second of all, you're gonna find out who the whistleblower is when they testify before Congress. But following up from his effectively threat to execute the person, I find that to be worrying when he's like, I deserve to meet him in person. There had been a report from 60 Minutes that person was in some sort of witness protection or some sort of protection. They have since, the lawyers have backtracked on that. I don't know how exactly that was misstated, because 60 Minutes said they have a letter specifically saying he was in witness protection. Apparently that's not the case, but obviously the whistleblower is concerned. And we saw what happened to Epstein. Not saying anything, I'm just saying, watch out for this person. And then we also have, outside of that individual, we have another individual, so Adam Schiff, who I'm not necessarily always the biggest fan of, but he's been very outspoken about this issue. Trump tweeted, I believe it was this morning, saying, Representative Adam Schiff illegally made up a fake and terrible statement, pretending it to be mine as the most important part of my call to the Ukrainian president, and read it aloud to Congress and the American people. It bore no relationship to what I said on the call, arrest for treason? Well, again, that's that whole thing where, and this isn't just on the right, like resistance folks love to throw it back to the right. The idea that like, I don't like you, you're gonna get executed for treason. Everybody seems to use that as like their go-to. My personal stance is I don't want anyone to be killed by the state, even Donald Trump. I don't care if you committed treason, you're not getting executed. You can go to jail for the rest of your life. But that is obviously, at the very least, intended to get his followers fired up about the idea that Adam Schiff could go to the electric chair. Which is a joke he also made about Joe Biden about a week ago about how he'd get the electric chair.
Never be a joke whatsoever, right?
He also referred to AOC and the rest of the squad as savages this weekend. So that's just one of the smaller ones. It's not directly about starting a civil war, but to give you an idea of how this is proceeding, poorly. For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.